It takes more than a healthy bank account to keep up with the well-heeled residents of Palo Alto, California. In this high-tech hamlet, a high IQ is de rigueur for the overachieving set. But when a local family's darkest secrets come to light...
Who does that to a school teacher? Oh.
The mystery has even the sharpest minds scratching their heads. You have to wake up pretty early in the morning to slip something past Jay Thorwaldson. As editor of the Palo Alto Weekly, this lifelong resident covers all the biggest stories in town.
The big events that happened were things like Palo Alto high school games and who's winning the lawn bowling competition this weekend.
Jay's a man with his ear to the ground, ready to move fast when things get slightly more serious.
My first stop in the morning at 6:30 was the police and the fire.
And that's how he hears one morning that there's trouble afoot.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
Emergency operators receive a frantic 911 call from a house in Southgate, an upscale section of Palo Alto.
The man had discovered that his wife had fallen down the stairs.
Female down, unconscious.
Officer Sandra Brown arrives at the scene, and what she sees stops her cold.
I arrived at the steps of the basement, and when I looked down, I could see the victim.
Christine Fitzhugh is bleeding and unconscious. Her husband, Ken, is frantic.
She was lying on her back. There was blood all around her, a little bit of blood on the walls.
Ken Fitzhugh is covered in blood as well from an attempt at CPR. But despite everyone's best efforts, it's too late. The 55-year-old schoolteacher is pronounced dead at the scene. But how did this happen?
There was a metal bell right at the base of the stairs. From what I saw, it looked like she tripped, hit her head on the bell. It appears that she bled out from her wounds from the back of her head.
It appears as if Christine is the victim of a tragic accident. For Christine's dearest friends, like fellow teacher Charlie May Knight, this unexpected tragedy hits hard.
Well, I was a basket case, you know, when I heard. First, I couldn't believe it, and I didn't want to believe it.
Happily married for 33 years, Christine and Ken had a beautiful house, 2 boys in college, and a life as ordered as their well-manicured front lawn.
They were like Ozzie and Harriet. It was just one of those families that you just knew everything was right.
Such a perfect couple, such a terrible accident. But there's something about this tragedy that rubs some citizens the wrong way.
I just can't believe somebody would die from falling down the stairs. I mean, did she trip or was she drunk or something?
To be honest, I think the whole thing sounds pretty fishy to me. I mean, am I the only one that thinks it looks a lot like foul play?
Palo Alto police are thinking the same thing. So Detective Mike Denson is assigned to the case.
When I initially arrived at the scene, I didn't know the extent of the injuries on the victim at all. All I knew is the victim was deceased and there was a lot of blood.
And those aren't things a homicide detective takes lightly.
I contacted Ken Fitzhugh in the dining room of the house, went up and talked to him.
Covered in his wife's blood, Ken seems to have gotten himself in quite a mess. Now, can he talk his way out of it?
He surmised that she had come home between classes and doing chores around the house. He thought that she had tripped going down the stairs.
One look at the scene supports the theory.
There was a shoe about halfway down the stairs. There was dry cleaning at the bottom of the stairs.
Who knew fashion could be so fatal?
Nice deep breath.
News of the accident quickly spreads through this perfectly centered town. But some of the local yogis think this theory is a bit of a stretch.
Do you think there's a possibility that this is more than just an accident? I mean, with all the blood and everything on the stairs?
Well, I know people are going to talk about it.
I don't think she was an alcoholic or a drug addict.
I'm not going to make any assumptions about this till we actually know what happened.
Now that's good karma. But the rest of Palo Alto is more interested in answers than inner peace. And right now, the police have neither.
This death didn't sit quite right. Typically, people do not pass away from falling downstairs.
So how did Christine die? It's always best to start with the last person to see her that morning.
Ken Fitzhugh said that he had been scheduled to go up to San Bruno and do a real estate development project.
The site is an hour's drive from the Fitzhugh's posh pad.
As he starts to come back, His phone rings, and it's his wife's school.
It seems Christine never showed up to work. Ken immediately called Christine's two best friends, but they hadn't heard from her either.
He drove back to Palo Alto, picked up the two friends, drove back to the house, goes to the basement door. When he opens that, he sees her.
Christine's friends confirm Ken's account, but it doesn't take a genius to know this case is far from closed.
We knew something was amiss, but we would wait for the autopsy to determine the cause and manner of death.
Is this homicide detective just trolling for more cases? Or might he be onto something? Within hours, the crucial autopsy results come in.
We found that there were multiple blunt trauma wounds to the head, and there was also strangulation to the neck.
Either this was one special staircase, or this wasn't an accident at all.
The cause and manner of death was homicide.
But who would want to kill this kindly schoolteacher? One suspect immediately comes to mind.
When a woman's murdered, I think generally the husband is initially looked at. Actually, most of the time, that's who it turns out to be.
Could this perfect suburban dad be hiding the darkest of suburban secrets? Or is there more to this mystery than meets the eye? It's a sunny day in Palo Alto, California, and the techies, the yuppies, and their well-outfitted offspring have all come out to play in the dazzling California sunshine. But the murder of Christine Fitzhugh has left these nervous natives in desperate need of some deep breathing.
Let's cut to the chase. People are going to immediately jump to the conclusion it was the husband.
Are you saying that you don't think he did it?
But in a town where violent crime is as rare as falling house prices, the idea of murder just seems preposterous.
In Palo Alto, people usually go to their shrinks before they kill their wife or husband.
But not all Palo Altans are quite so well adjusted. Their .coms may have flopped, but one thing locals won't tolerate is a killer on the loose. So cops know they need to turn up the heat on Christine's husband, Ken, faster than a seasoned barista can whip up 2 free trade double soy mochas.
When I first met with Ken Fitzhugh, he was being very deliberate in what he said to me.
Well, one would expect nothing less from a Stanford grad.
Ken Fitzhugh was highly intelligent. I considered that perhaps in everyday dealings, he was very methodical.
But it's not winning him any friends in the Homicide Bureau. Detective Denson decides to scrutinize more than just his story.
When I brought Ken Fitzhugh back to the station, I did examine him to see if he had any form of defensive wounds or anything that would have indicated that he was involved in any form of altercation.
But Ken doesn't have a scratch on him. And unless a high handicap counts as motive, Ken has no reason to kill his wife.
All the people that we talked to thought that they were a great, loving couple.
And they had the matching Beamers to prove it.
When you would see Christine, you would see Ken. And you saw Ken and Christine, you would see the children. They were the epitome of what a good, solid family should be like.
But somebody tore this perfect family apart. The question is, who? Over at the Palo Alto Lawn Bowlers Club, this shocking crime is hitting close to home.
But this is scary because it was actually in broad daylight in her home.
And a new theory is beginning to take seed.
Do you think it was a robbery or what?
They're not saying.
What?
It wasn't in the paper, and the police seemed pretty quiet about it.
Right, I wonder if the neighbors saw anything.
Clearly, these lawn jocks are anxious for investigators to get the ball rolling. Fears of a robbery gone wrong are certainly well-founded. The lavish homes of Southgate are every cat burglar's dream.
We were experiencing a number of burglaries in that area. We were increasing our patrols. We were trying to develop leads on the cases.
Could Christine's murder be connected to this recent crime spree? Back at the police department, Detective Denson and Sergeant Scott Wong take a closer look at the crime scene.
With all the blood down there, it's more than likely it happened right there at the bottom of the stairwell.
Everything seems to fit.
Maybe she was coming down the stairs and surprised the burglar who may have come in through that back little cellar doors.
It looks like Christine was caught completely by surprise, and her killer seems to have been chillingly careful.
There's no weapon, so this guy's pretty organized, and he knows what he's doing.
A calculating killer walking the streets of Palo Alto? that's hardly going to soothe the nerves of this frightened and well-caffeinated town.
She probably had the door unlocked, was home alone. He probably walked right in and killed her.
I wonder who would have done it then. I mean, she was a school teacher. Who does that to a school teacher?
Ugh.
Over at the Palo Alto Weekly, Jay Thorwaldson has his finger on the quickening pulse of the frightened town.
There's a panic in a neighborhood when that happens, and people begin thinking they need to lock their doors.
No doubt about it, there's been a bloodbath in Palo Alto, and this time, it's not just in tech stocks. So police step up their search for suspicious characters in the neighborhood.
I actually sent out entire teams. We were contacting every person who lived in the neighborhood, that was working in the neighborhood. I wanted to make sure that I had captured every single possibility of solving this crime.
And before too long, investigators make an intriguing discovery.
We did find someone in the area who was on parole and working in a construction crew.
And by odd coincidence, this parolee just happened to be working in the area on the day of Christine's murder.
He was certainly a person of interest.
Police immediately track down their suspect, but just as quickly, he hammers out a slick alibi.
This parolee was actually working on the day in question.
And yet, this ex-con's time card won't quite get him off the hook.
It's always possible that the person could have slipped out of the site without anybody see him, committed a homicide, and then slipped back into the site without anybody ever knowing that they had left.
Was this construction worker with a checkered past moonlighting as a murderer? Or has the real killer already slipped through their fingertips? Welcome to sunny California, home to pricey real estate, beautiful people, unique sports, and murder. Palo Alto detectives have a new suspect in the murder of Christine Fitzhugh, a two-strike parolee with a penchant for burglary. It's a lead that's leapt to the front page of the Palo Alto Weekly.
And there was surmising that perhaps she stumbled upon a burglar and he grabbed a hammer and went after her to keep her quiet.
But was this two-time loser capable of murder?
If you're a three-strike parolee and somebody catches you doing a burglary, you're going away for the rest of your life.
Unless, of course, that witness happens to take a nasty spill down the stairs. Now, if police can just tie the construction worker to the scene.
The crime scene team processed the entire house for fingerprints. I told them, I want you to start at the top of the house and go all the way to the bottom.
And their hard work pays off. In the Fitzhugh's seemingly pristine kitchen, they make a startling discovery.
Hey, Mike, you gotta see these pictures.
What are we seeing here?
Well, these are the before pictures that we took, and then these are the after pictures here that we took with the luminol. And look, there appears to be a large amount of blood.
With this much blood, this is definitely where the homicide occurred, in this kitchen.
Investigators now know that the crime scene was staged. This is beginning to look less like a home invasion and more like a premeditated murder. And among the tech-savvy residents of Palo Alto, that makes for instant gossip.
They found out that it wasn't a robbery.
Did you hear that it was completely cleaned up after? Like someone hung out for a long time. Whoever it was must have been really comfortable there.
That is so creepy. I mean, why would they hang out after they did it? You would think they would want to get out of the house.
I wonder how her marriage was.
Hello?
Hey, what's up?
Murder, that's what's up. With a profile emerging, Assistant District Attorney Mike Fletcher joins the investigation.
A stranger has really no motive to stage a crime. They're in a hurry to get out of the scene to avoid detection.
You're now looking for someone who's probably close to the victim.
Which raises some intriguing questions.
Is there some sort of lover that you don't know about? Is there a friend that the victim has something on?
While the crime lab analyzes trace evidence from the scene, Detective Denson begins to chip away at the Fitzhugh's perfect facade.
As I went through Christine's phone book, I began to call different people, trying to find out history on Christine.
Soon, Denson comes upon a juicy tidbit that will turn this investigation upside down.
I interviewed Christine's best friend. He tells me that when Ken and Christine lived in San Diego, that Christine became involved in an affair with Ken's best friend.
This is one 7-10 split the Lawn Bowling Club is sure to pick up.
Can you believe it? So she'd been having an affair for a while with this guy.
Apparently so.
Clearly, there's more to this kindly teacher than meets the eye.
I don't think anybody who knew her in Palo Alto would have suspected that. Although we all have our secrets, this was certainly an interesting and an important one.
The nosy neighbors of Palo Alto seem to agree.
When something big happens, there's a buzz about it.
And that's certainly the case down at the University Cafe, where everyone has an opinion.
Skeletons in the closet.
But she was such a nice person and everything in the community.
Not everyone's perfect.
They certainly aren't. Just ask Christine's lover, Robert Brown, a disbarred attorney with a fondness for the wrong side of the law.
I ultimately tracked down Robert Brown in Placerville, California.
Robert is holed up in a local hospital after a motorcycle accident.
I asked him about his relationship with Christine. He actually is very straightforward and tells me right away that he had an affair with Christine. It spanned many, many years.
And Robert Brown has one more secret to finally get off his chest.
Well, it turned out that the oldest son was not fathered by Kenneth Fitzhugh, was in fact fathered by Robert Brown.
And with their son about to graduate college, Christine was preparing a very big surprise. The truth.
If what he said was true, Christine intended to tell Justin Fitzhugh that Robert Brown was his actual father.
Investigators have a pretty good idea about how Ken must have taken the news.
Robert Brown gave me a lot of motive for Ken Fitzhugh to kill Christine.
They say the truth will set you free. But after 30 years of marriage, did the truth of his wife's infidelity set Ken Fitzhugh on a path to murder? They say that sunshine is the best disinfectant. So it's a good thing this is Northern California. Revelations about Christine's secret past have cast Ken Fitzhugh in a whole new light as a suspect.
This seems almost like a tawdry novel that nobody would believe, but it was true.
Investigators now take a much harder look at Ken's alibi.
I began to examine what he had said he was doing that day.
Was Ken really 30 miles away at the time of the attack?
When we examined the cell phone records, we could establish a general location within probably a quarter-mile area of where he was when he received certain phone calls.
With the help of fraud experts at the phone company, the investigative team discovers major holes in Ken's story.
He was not where he said he was.
In fact, Ken was right back at home on lovely Escobita Avenue.
That cell phone made a liar out of him.
What once seemed like a solid alibi is beginning to unravel. Now he's in some serious hot water.
Obtained a search warrant on both the house and vehicles, and found a shirt belonging to Ken Fitzhugh with blood all over it.
And there's something else about this hidden shirt that won't come out in the wash.
It's a match.
DNA tests on the shirt prove that the blood belongs to Christine.
When you put all the pieces together, there was only one rational, reasonable conclusion. Kenneth Fitzhugh killed his wife.
We obtained an arrest warrant for the suspect and took Ken Fitzhugh into custody for 187 of the Penal Code, murder.
The game is up for this unlikely killer.
He was like your typical nerdy, kind of middle-aged guy.
But sometimes even nerds get pushed too far.
He had built a facade in his life of this perfect Stanford MBA businessman living in an affluent neighborhood in a multi-million-dollar house. This would have all crumbled down the minute she announced that he had raised a child that she had from an affair.
Keeping up appearances can come at quite a cost.
I think Ken Fitzhugh planned this murder. He parked his vehicle on an adjacent street so that no one would see as he came and went. He probably came in through the cellar door. Christine was sitting there eating.
And that's when Ken went on the attack.
It is quite likely that he may have started strangling her out of rage and may have actually slammed her head against the floor or the table.
And ever the meticulous businessman, Ken took pains to make it all look like a tragic accident.
He then dragged her down the stairs, and ultimately he had to go up and clean up that whole kitchen.
All while his wife lay dying just feet away. With Ken in custody, the good neighbors of Palo Alto can now resume their simple pleasures.
You never know what goes on behind closed doors.
That's right.
I never understand why they don't just divorce.
But Ken won't go down without a fight. Though he might think a fancy degree will assist his own defense, others disagree.
You can't have sympathy for a guy like that. He killed that woman in cold blood.
I don't know. I mean, 30 years is a long time to be married.
He was not a very believable witness.
We were able to disprove every bit of his alibi. There was motive, there was means, and he was guilty.
Ken Fitzhugh receives the maximum sentence for second-degree murder, 15 years to life.
I don't believe Mr. Fitzhugh will be walking amongst us in the near future, and maybe never.
For Ken and Christine's friends, the whole lurid tale is almost impossible to believe.
I guess I had to face the sad reality that perhaps he was moved to commit such a crime.
In Palo Alto, your neighbors might wear their IQs and their bank accounts on their shirt sleeves. And while the murder of Christine Fitzhugh proves that even the most perfect family can be harboring a deadly secret, the upwardly mobile in this town aren't ready to let the grass grow under their feet.
The way I look at it, it's time to move on.
And that's all a good Californian can do.